Hi everyone, welcome back.
In today's tutorial, we are going to dive into one of Angular's core feature called directives. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of what are Angular directives, where do we use those directives, what are the different types of directives, and how we can use those directives to enhance our Angular applications. We will also learn how to create our own custom directives as well. So let's get started. So first thing first, what exactly are directives in Angular? So directive is a class that can modify the structure of the DOM or modify attributes in our HTML templates. So this can allow us to attach different behaviors in the DOM. So Angular directives come in two major types. One of them is structural directives, which you can see here ngIf, ngFor and ngSwitch, which basically allows us to change our DOM elements by adding or removing elements. Okay. Other directives are attribute directives. Attribute directives are ngClass and ngStyle. These basically help us to change the appearance or behavior of an element in our component. So in this video, we'll focus both on structural and attribute directives. We'll understand how they work and how to use them. And at the end of the video, we'll also learn how to create our own custom directives and use them as well. So let's get started with the structural directives first. So structural directives basically are responsible for shaping and reshaping the DOM structure as I explained. They are very easy to spot because they use an asterisk in front of them. As we have already used these directives in our previous video like ngIf, ngFor and ngSwitch. So now let's go to Visual Studio Code and do some practical examples on it. So in our app component.ts file, we will start with our ngIf directive. We will create a property here called isLoggedIn to check if our user is logged in or not. So if is logged in would be false in beginning, okay, and this property would be of type boolean. And now we will go into our HTML file, and inside this we will create a div here, and we will say a p tag where we will say user welcome back, and we will say user, okay, like this. And we'll create another div tag where we'll say please log in, okay, like this. And we will only show this statement. So these are two statements. We need to show welcome back user when user is logged in, right? So we will say only show this one when our is logged in is true, and we will show this statement when our user is logged out. So we will again say ngIf, and inside this we will say if is logged in is false, then we need to show user this, that please log in, and if this is true, then we can say them that welcome back user. So this is one example of how we can use ngIf directive in our templates. Now if we go to our local host, we can see here that please log in, right? But if this was false here, if this was true, like for example our user is logged in, and if we have that kind of logic, then we will see welcome back user, the second div, right? So that's how we use ngIf directive. Now I'll show you how to use ngFor directive as well. So to show ngFor directives, I'll create a items array, okay? And there we will have list of items. They're all strings, okay? Now I want to show all of them into my HTML. I want to render them. So for that I will go into my HTML, and inside this I'll create a div, and there I'll create a list item, and inside that I'll say ngFor, and ngFor will be let item of items, and this items is what we are getting from our ts file. So we are using it here, and now we have access to each item. It's like basic JavaScript for loop, and we can use our conditional rendering here to show our each item like this. Now when we save it and we go to our localhost, we can see all of the items. We can see they have been displayed and rendered here. So our ngFor loop basically, it loops over all the items in the array, and it generates a li, this list item element for each item, and we have access to all of them. Now we'll also see how to use ngSwitch statement as well, which is our last structural directive. So again we'll go to our ts file, and we will create something called view mode. So we've created a property view mode, and this is of type string, and for example it has this list. So view mode is of type string, and it's equals to list for now. Now we can go to our HTML file, and inside this we can have list of divs inside that we can have multiple div, and each div can have a switch case. So we can say ngSwitch case, and switch case could be equals to map, right? So like this we can create multiple. Another them could be, and this one will make it default, so we'll just remove this. So if our ngSwitch case is equals to of string map, then we can show our map content, okay? And if it's equals to list, we'll show our list content. And if this equals to default, which is ngSwitch case default, this one, here we don't need to mention anything, then it is equals to, for example, default view content, okay? So whenever this div is rendered, it will go and see and try to find the condition which it can map. For example, our ngSwitch case here currently, as we can see, our view mode equals to list, right? So when we go to our HTML, inside the div we define a ngSwitch. So we say ngSwitch only for view mode, and as we know, view mode here is equals to this list. So it will go and try finding that switch case which has list in it. So is this one. So it will only show this div and not show this and this div. And also we need to put our ngSwitch in square brackets for it to access this. Now once we have done that and we go to our localhost, we should see our list content. So yes, we can see that. But if we go and we change our TS file and make it something else, right, which doesn't match any of the ngSwitch case, then it would basically show our default view content. And as you can see, that is the one which it shows. Now we will understand what are attribute directives in Angular. So attribute directives change the appearance or even the behavior of an element. The most common used attribute directives are ngClass, ngStyle, and ngModel. ngClass basically it helps us to add or remove a set of CSS classes, which is really helpful. And ngStyle adds and remove a set of HTML styles. And ngModel we have already used. It helps us to use two-way data binding between our input field and variable, which is HTML and TS file. So now we'll switch back to VS Code and do some practical examples. So if we go to our app.component TS file, we'll get rid of these stuffs and we will create a boolean variable called isActive. So isActive is false in the beginning, and now I'll go into our HTML, we'll get rid of these bits, and now I'll say I have a button, and the button has a text called click me. It's a basic button like this, okay? Now with this we want to do something with this button. So we will add some styling for our button, and for that we will use ngClass. So ngClass directive. So inside this string we need to use curly brackets, and there we need to write our CSS class. So we can have a CSS class called active, and we will have another CSS class called inactive, okay? You have to listen to me what I say, as this can get confusing. So we want this CSS class to be on this button only when our one of the property is true. So we have created a property here called isActive. So when this isActive is true, then only we want to give this button this active class, okay? So when isActive is true, and when isActive is false, we want to give our button inactive class. So for that we have used this not variable, okay? Now we can just go into our CSS for here, and we can create a class called active, okay? And inside that we can say, for example, color, okay? And color could be aqua. And another class when our button is inactive, which we have created already, this class we will say our color is equal to red, right? So you can see click me says red. Now we will say we'll make that click me to blue, okay? So for that, when we go into our TS file, into our HTML file, we'll also do one thing. So if we make this property true here, we will see that our click me has become blue, right? So this can be really useful for dynamically applying CSS styles. So another example is also using ngStyle, which is another directive we can use. So we can have here a property called is highlighted, and that would be of type boolean, and we can make it false in the beginning. So to test this in our HTML, we can create a p tag, and there we can have ngStyle, and this directive basically also we use in the same style. We put curly brackets, and inside that, now instead of putting a CSS class, we'll directly change our properties for this specific element. For example, the background color. So we'll say background color. Okay, so this background color is not a class, this is the specific property of our p tag. So this background color we want to change if our is highlighted. This is highlighted is our variable which we created here. So this property, whenever this property is true, at that time we will use conditional rendering. That time we want to make our p tag yellow, but other case, which is if is highlighted is false, then we want to make it purple. Okay, so again we'll have to put it here inside this. That's it, and we can say here that highlight me text. Okay, so you see what we have done here. We have put style for this specific HTML element, which is p tag, and we are changing its background color property, which we would usually go into CSS and specifically change. But right now we are making it dynamic by saying if is highlighted, whenever in our application, if this property becomes true, then make it yellow, and if it becomes false, then make it purple. And for that we are using conditional rendering. So if we go here, you can see the highlight me currently is purple, right? But if I put on my this button, if I put a click event, and on that click button I say that change color. Okay, and what I'll do, whenever I'll call this method, I will change this is highlighted to true or false, right? So I'll go here and I'll declare the method, and here I'll say whenever basically change color, we click that button, I want to change is highlighted to take the opposite property, which is highlighted false. So if it's true, it will become false. If it's false, it becomes true, vice versa. So now if we go to our localhost, now when I click this button, it should become true, and our color should change to yellow. Boom. So see, it changes the background color dynamically based on our property is highlighted. Like this, we can change it. So that's how you use ngStyle in your Angular application. So these are Angular built-in directives, which provides us so many tools to change our DOM. Okay, like structure directive, Angular directive. We saw ngIf, ngFor, ngSwitch, ngClass, style, and ngModel as well. So now we will learn how to make our own custom directives. So custom directives allows us to take some of the common behavior, encapsulate it, and apply it throughout our Angular application. For example, the highlight example we used in our last directive, if we want this functionality to exist in the whole application, instead of writing the code again and again, we can create some common encapsulated code, and we can use that and put it as a directive and use it throughout our application. So for that, we will be using our own custom directive, and I'll teach you how to make our own custom directive, change it according to our needs, and then finally use it into our HTML templates. So let's see that in action. So first thing we'll do is we will go to our command line and we will create our new directive. So we will say ngGD for directive, and our directive will be called highlight. Once we do that, it would create us a highlight directive. As you can see here, highlight directive.ts file. Inside this, we will change this directive according to our own needs. So first thing is we need the element reference property of each of the elements we want to change. For example, if we want to do it for register page, this page, and so on. So in our constructor, we will import el, which is our element reference, so that we can go into a element reference and we can change those properties like background color and other stuff. So now we have access to our element reference. After this, we will create a host listener. So now we are basically implementing a highlight directive. the one which I showed you in the last example. So we will have host listener here, okay, and host listener basically, and the host listener will look for our mouse enter event. So mouse enter, and here we'll say on mouse enter. This will be our method name, on mouse enter. So inside the host listener, we want to call our highlight method and pass whatever property we want to. So for that, we will go beneath and create a highlight method. We'll say private highlight, okay, and this highlight method, it will take a color property, and that will be of type string, okay. This highlight will take a color parameter that will be of type string, and inside that we will call our element ref. So we'll say this dot el, our element ref, and we will go to the native element and we will change the style. So we'll say this dot el dot native element dot style, and we will change the background color, and we will make it equal to color whatever we pass through our method. So we will make it equals to this, right? Now whenever our user takes his mouse and hover over our any of the statement we want to apply it to, so whenever our this method is called, basically on mouse enter, whenever mouse enter to a specific element, we want to call our this dot highlight, okay, and we want to pass a yellow color, and whenever user leaves, we want to pass another color. So we will say on mouse leave event here, like this, on mouse leave, and at that time we want to make the color pink, okay. So after saving this, so we have completed our highlight directive. Now we just need to use it in our application wherever we need it for. So for example, we go to our app component.html. So here we can create a h1 property, and inside that we can have whatever text we want, right? And if we want to change the color of this property, now we don't need to write all of this code again and again. We can just write our app highlight, we save it, and here whenever we hover over our mouse to this, it should change our color. You see, it becomes pink, and whenever I hover over it, it becomes yellow. Once I leave, it becomes pink again. So great job. You've just learned today what Angular directives are, how to use structural directives like ngIf, ngFor, switch, what are attribute directives, and also how to create your own custom directive and use throughout your Angular application. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs and consider subscribing to the channel for more Angular related content. I'll see you guys in the next video.